And I was like, okay. And I took the leap anyways, because I wanted to be passionate about what I've done. Have I ever made that back? No. Am I ever going to be where I was financially? Am I 10 times happier? Yes. I wake up every day. Well, I'm 5 years into this now, and I wake up every day saying, when's this ride going to be over? When are we going to have to step off and move to something else? And it just never ends. And so it's such a great collective of people and individuals like yourself that have made it, check all the boxes, all the feels.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where professionals in the attractions business can get tips, tools, and even a bit of inspiration.
Join us as we tackle some of the most important topics facing the attractions industry today and gain insights from some of the top leaders, creators, and influencers from the exciting world of theme parks, zoos, museums, aquariums, and family entertainment centers.
Because this show is created by Attraction Pros for Attraction Pros. I am Josh Liebman, Director of Business Development for Amusement Advantage. I help attractions understand and improve their guest experience.
And I'm Matt Heller, founder of Performance Optimist Consulting. I help leaders lead and work with attractions to increase employee engagement and retention.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and enjoy the leading resource for attractions industry professionals, the Attraction Pros podcast. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going great, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I apologize for stealing your line, but this is a celebration episode for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Did you ever think that when we started this, however many years ago, that we'd be at episode 150 right now?
I had no idea. You and I just sort of, do you remember how we started this?
Yeah, so it kind of started at dinner when each one of us said the other one should start a podcast. And then we both said, no, probably not going to do that. And then about a month or so later, I think I emailed you and said, what if we did this together?
And then we were like, oh, why didn't we think of that? Yeah, we were at dinner. It was in Jacksonville, Florida, right before the Florida Attractions Association conference a few years ago. And I was like, Matt, I've got this great idea. You need to start a podcast. And then you said something like, no, you need to start a podcast. And I was like, all right, fine. I guess neither of us are starting a podcast. Right. So here we are 150 weeks later, and we've put out fresh content every single Tuesday. So I'm very impressed with that we've been able to keep each other accountable and keep this growing. And we've had so many phenomenal guests on the show, many of whom are in the call right now. And, this is really something that we created to be a resource for the industry, not only to learn and receive information, but also to be very collaborative and very interactive as well, which is what makes this episode really special and very unique.
Yeah. When you say interactive, that's what we're kind of hoping for with this episode. We've done Attraction Pros Live where we take questions and get everybody to answer those questions. But this is really about sharing some of the great things that you've experienced over your time in the industry. And whether you're currently in the industry or you've been in the industry or if you've just been a guest in the industry, that's what we want to hear. We want to celebrate for our 150th episode. We want to celebrate some of the great things that people have been through and have experienced. So what do you say? Are we ready to start?
I'd say let's get started. Do you want to introduce the first participant here to share their favorite attractions industry memory?
I will. Just going down the list, I'm going to start with Adam Sandy. So Adam, if you could just, I just said your name, but just share a little bit about, where you're from and tell us what's one of your greatest memories here in the attractions industry.
Sure. I like how I get to go first. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we were alphabetical by name. My first name.
Easy enough. I'm president of business development for Ride Entertainment, and I've been in the industry since '01. And my memory actually dates back to one of my earlier IAPAs. And I guess I've been in the industry long enough to call myself a veteran because I can't remember which year it was at this point, since all IAPAs tend to bleed together the longer you're in. But I think it was '02 or '03. And it was actually the social at Walt Disney World of the Magic Kingdom. And as people who may not frequent that property may or may not know, historically, there's not been alcohol allowed on the property. There aren't a lot of private buyouts for companies. it's sort of been this special place that, is really open to the public for the most part. So, I was pretty young at the time, about I think 25, 26, been in the industry a few years. And so, I was super excited. Hey, we're just going to go to Magic Kingdom, have some fun. And we get there, and then we're just walking through the front gate with a few friends. And we kind of stopped to look around and just take it all in. You don't see the Magic Kingdom without a lot of people there. So that was really cool to begin with. And then as we're talking, all of a sudden, what do we see but we're bars coming up from the ground. So basically, if you've never been to Walt Disney World, they have all this whole underground system. And what did they do for IAAPA? They had all the beer come up from underground and start serving people. So I grabbed the beer. We started walking, going on Space Mountain, going on Big Thunder Mountain. And it was just one of those nights, where you're with your friends, you're with people from the industry, you're having fun, you're doing what I wish more people in the attractions industry got to do, which is just enjoy being at a park sometimes, because sometimes it's so much work. And for me, both as someone in my mid-20s, new to the industry, but also now, it was just a wonderful time in my life to be at that place, have so much fun, and be with people I really cared about, many of which I'm still close friends with today. So that's just one of those things that's stuck with me for my whole life, is just that evening and the fireworks at the end of the night, grabbing a ride on Space Mountain on the way out. Just one of those things that whether you're 5, 25, or 55, you feel like a kid again. And how wonderful is that?
Well said. Yeah, no, that is definitely a great experience when you have the opportunity to get to do that and kind of experience Magic Kingdom in that way that most guests wouldn't normally get to. So yeah,
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So next on the list, let's go to Ed Hodgman. Tell us about your first IAAPA Expo.
Hey guys. Yeah, my first IAAPA Expo, it was in 2000 and, oh gosh, I gotta remember now, 2005. It was in Atlanta. I had been in the industry now for a couple of years as a year-round person, year-round team member at the park, and I had, always wanted to go. And so I had done my research, what classes were being offered, and, made the pitch, got it approved. So it was like my first real business trip as in the world. So I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Going to Atlanta for the first time, got down there, met a ton of people, and got to see people that I didn't typically get to see on a regular basis. And after, I can't remember which day it was, but it was whatever day we had the NIAPA board meeting. And I'm walking on one of the concourses, and Tom Morrow is there, and we're going in opposite directions, and he's like, hey, where are you going? And I'm like, oh, I'm, checking out, going here, going there. He's like, well, why aren't you coming to the NIAPA board meeting? And I'm like, well, because I'm not a board member. And he's like, oh no, you're a member. So he does this thing, and Matt, I'm sure you remember, he puts his arm around you and says, okay, now come on, you're going to come with me. So he did that, and he brought me there, and I went to my first NIAPA meeting, and now the rest is history. I mean, I've been with NIAPA. After that, they asked me to be on the board, and that was in 2000. So I started on the board in 2006. So now I'm going into year 15 with the board, and being now a staff person for the board, and talk about being crazy with everything that's going on, dealing with the 6 different states and all their different reopening plans, and trying to help people get open as quickly and as safely as possible. So yeah, that's my memory, is, being not only introduced to IAAPA, but NIAPA at the same time.
That's so cool. And kind of similar to Adam's, where you're at this event and you're surrounded by all these people that you get to now be friends with and get to work with for so long. And there's actually somebody else on the call who was going to remember Tom Morrow. We'll just go ahead and go to Alan, if that's okay. Alan Janeiro, he goes way back, because Alan was actually my first boss at Canopy Lake Park, my first group leader. He remembers the shoe story very well. So Alan, why don't you share with us your story?
Sure. I had a little bit of trouble trying to pick a story, because actually, Matt, we could write a book about Canopy.
Yes.
And Tom Morrow, great guy, and definitely had a huge impact on my career in the industry. And I'm currently a Boston Public tools teacher, and you would be amazed at how a lot of the skills I learned working in an amusement park transferred to managing a classroom, especially working at guest services, but another time. So my story actually involves Matt, and one of the things we got to do was basically build Canobie Lake Park's orientation program from the ground up. And the further along it went, the more it was just the two of us. Originally, there were like 5 different people, including Tom, and I love Tom Morrow, and I'm forever grateful to him, but he would make orientation go on for hours. So he always had great stories, but we would kind of have to, like, you know, these people are being timed, so they're being paid, so we have to move on. But eventually it got down to myself and Matt doing the whole 3-hour program, and the most exciting time was when we would do that first orientation, sometimes I think mid-March, and the excitement in the room, you know, was palpable. The owners would pop in, the new hires were there, and, you know, Matt and I had been cooped up in our offices in the middle of this park without talking to a lot of people. So suddenly seeing all these people, many of who we hired, funny stories there, but it was great. It felt like opening night of a Broadway show. Everybody was excited. I think on those nights we let Tom talk a little bit longer sometimes, because he also was so excited to kick off another season. And I'm going to give a shout out because Canobie Lake Park in Salem, love that place. Still family owned, family operated, and, you know, the memories I have are great. But when Matt, you know, said come up with a story, a memorable thing, I always think back to that first orientation in April, and how nervous we were, and just amazing. And I wish we could do that again. That was fun. But that's my memory.
Well, and Alan, you and I get to sort of relive that. So if the people on the call don't know, you're also one of the people that I go on my Coaster Nerd trips with. So he's one of the 3. It's myself, Alan, and our friend Darren. So when you see us post about our Coaster Nerd trip, Alan is one of those folks. Whoop, whoop. Didn't get to go this year, but we're looking for a big trip in 2021.
Oh yeah, 2021, huge. We're gonna come see all of you, I hope.
Sounds like that'll be a really big trip. You got some time to make up for missing it this year. That's not something you can do virtually, you know. Alan, thanks for sharing that. Let's go to Beth Stanley. Would love to hear about Disney with your young children in the 80s. So if you can share what that was like and why that's your favorite industry memory.
Well, say that again.
I was just reading what you sent to us, that your favorite industry memory is Disney with your young children in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, you know, I do think about, I didn't even remember that I sent you anything. So I'm like, what? But yes, you know, if you remember Discovery Zone, my babies were babies. And I do remember, I was poor. We didn't have much money, and it would be a save up thing as a parent that we would go and do with my kiddos. And it's so funny that I wound up in this particular industry, right? Because I basically got addicted to the game of bowling, which then moved me into the sport. And then eventually I wasn't good enough in the sport, although I do have a 298 to my name. Thank you very much. I was not going to get rich being a bowler. And I got real addicted to the business and the change in the business and the fact that it moved into entertainment, and kind of probably just exactly like all of you went through, you know, a frontline position, and then a sales position, and then a corporate national sales position. And I got to tell you, my most memorable thing that sticks out in my mind from that situation is when we opened the state tournament in Dallas, Texas. I don't know if you know much about it, kind of like any sports opening, they play the national anthem. And so in the state of Texas, a big place, when you have the state bowling tournament and you have to be the general manager, well, there's a lot of prep for that. And we had put aside the Whitney Houston anthem. You know, Star-Spangled Banner, Whitney's version is like the one. We also had a second version at that center done by B.B. King, and I love B.B. King. I had not tested that one, and for whatever reason, when all the men of the Texas State Tournament, including everybody on the board of the state and the city, were lined up across the 52 lanes at Don Carter East in Dallas, Texas, and it was time to do the Star-Spangled Banner, I couldn't find Whitney. And so I thought, oh, this will be perfect. And I did BB's version. And I don't know if you've heard BB's version, but it starts out like this. And it goes on for a long time. And then it's a long, long, long version. As a leader, and Matt, I thought this for you because I know you're so wonderful with leadership teaching. As a leader, I learned more that day than maybe I've ever learned. And that a couple of those things are that everything won't go right. You might get in trouble, and I did. People might not like you, and I hate that. I need people to love me. And you can recover. You can recover and you can survive. I didn't do anything out of malice. And, you know, on the 4th of July, I played B.B. King's version of the Star-Spangled Banner for good measure. And that year I did that was in 1998. So that was very fresh on my mind.
Wow.
Holiday weekend. So there you go. Lots of, and I love everything that you guys are saying because all those memories have something to do with being with people. And my gosh, what a perfect time to be celebrating, and how smart of you all to be celebrating being with others right now. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Beth, for that. Those are some amazing leadership lessons that I think can be even used right now, right? We're going to screw up, right? But we'll get through it, you know, so great tie into kind of what we're going through now. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jason Yaker, how about you? Let's hear from you. And I think you said all of the experiences are your favorite.
Yeah, definitely. So I have one that kind of stands out, which is in 2006 or 2007, I was in college, and a friend of mine who happens to be on the call today, I'll show you the picture in a minute, and you can figure out if you can figure out who it is, right? Convinced me to wake up really early and do all 4 Disney parks in one day, including drinking around the world at Epcot. And we did it. I'd never done it before. I've never done it since, but we did 4 parks one day. Exhausting. Let me get this picture up here. From 2007 there.
Okay.
That was a great day.
Yeah, it was a good memory.
It was an ambitious day that's one of my favorite memories of being in the industry too, that yeah, kind of forced you and dragged you around all 4 parks in one day. And we really did it all. We were exhausted by the end of the day. So thank you so much for sharing that memory. That's a fun one. I think we actually just passed the anniversary of that too. I think that showed up in my Facebook memories. So
yes, I think so.
So thank you. Let's go over to Ben Story. He's also been in the industry for a little while. I'm sure he's got some great memories too.
I was going to say, it's coming up 15 years for myself as well, like you, Josh, which is quite scary to think that time's gone that quickly. But I guess I've got, it's going to sound very, very cliche, my first shout out, and it's a horrible word to use, but networking. Through FAA and IAPAs.
A wonderful word.
Anyone in the industry between Josh and Matt, they don't know. So I've been in various sessions where typically Matt's been moderating, and if I need an introduction or want to go and speak to someone, Matt's like, oh, well, I played golf with them a couple of weeks ago. You'll know them somehow to have a connection, which is just awesome. And it's, I like to pass that on myself now as I'm growing a little bit longer in the tooth. Secondly would be the fact that I was a single-digit AttractionPros interview. I think I may get that printed onto a t-shirt for IAPA this year. And then from a personal side of things, Josh and I think Yaker, you're with us as well. We've done Halloween Horror Nights a couple of times down here at Universal Orlando Resort, and it's thoroughly entertaining. Going with anyone, it's thoroughly entertaining, but when you're going with Josh, it's like having your own VIP tour guide from his experience of when he used to work there. He knows all the cheeky back doors, the tricks. I remember coming out of Men in Black and being able to go through a secret staircase I didn't even know was there. But it's always been rounded out with some good fun and generally safe experiences. So yeah, thank you for your time, guys. I know it does take a lot of time and effort to do the recording and the editing and the posting, and I think a lot of that goes unsaid. So it's you've been many an accompaniment to myself when I've been walking around various client sites doing some maintenance work, having you guys sitting on my headphones. It's been most appreciated.
Well, thank you, Ben. And I hope to see that single-digit Attraction Pros participant T-shirt at IAPA this year. That'll be awesome. Or make it into one of your fancy jackets.
That's not a bad shout. Or I was going to get business cards, but that's a bit common. So, but Josh doesn't like to go collecting business cards.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Thank you, Ben. And it's wonderful to see you at all those different events. Florida Attractions Association, I think, is where we first met, and then saw you again at IAPA. One of my favorite memories of Ben is seeing him with a jacket with a big donut pin on it, which was super fun. And anything to kind of make sure that people remember him is awesome. So,
and that's one of his more modest jackets too.
Right, it was. Well, the donut really stole the show. Really stole the show. So with that, let's go to Curtis. How about you? Let's hear from you.
Hi, thanks for having me on here. This is great. I love hearing all these stories. But so you guys asked me to pick my favorite, which was like impossible. I have so many favorite memories. Most of them having to do with Cedar Point, and that's where this one comes from. So it was about 2008. I was working as a ride lead at Cedar Point, and I was getting off of my ride, and I ran into some upper management, Peggy Birch and Bill Spain, to be specific. And they were doing a park walk. It was one of those awkward situations where I didn't know whether to walk with them, do I walk ahead of them. They said hi to me. So I'm like, okay, now am I like roped into walking with them? Which I did. So I just stayed and walked with them and did the rest of the park walk, making small talk, soaking in all of their observations, which was awesome to see, and making sure I picked up every little piece of garbage I saw that whole way. Didn't want to embarrass myself in front of them. But we finally made it over to the Top Thrill Dragster Midway. And we're standing there watching. That's one of the best places in that park to people watch. And so we're standing there watching it, and Dragster launches, and Bill Spain's standing there, and he's like, that's just amazing. I'm like, yeah, I love watching this ride. He's like, no, listen. And so we're standing there, and the next car pulls up, and it's rumbling, Sunday, and arms down. And he's just like, that's the best damn sound effect in the industry. And like that's an absurd claim to make, but my long-term takeaway from that has been take pride in even the small details of your park, and just pay attention to the details. And so that's one, I think about that a lot, and never will I not hear that ride and think, that's the best damn sound effect in the industry. So
it definitely is. It's a memorable one that I think I can recite that entire auto spiel from that platform completely by heart. I used to even do that when they gave us all microphones, when they took away the auto spiel. So I was like, I'm just going to do the whole auto spiel. And then that arms down, head back and hold on. And then that rumbling sound, you can sense the anticipation and like the excitement, anxiety of like everyone in the train. That's like, if that fear could make a sound, that's what it would sound, right? It's like that rumbling sound as it starts to gear up. And yeah, I remember Peggy when I worked there too, and I just remember she was just one of the nicest people ever. I think Bill Spain, I believe he may have been at Geauga Lake at that time. Did he was he over there? Am I thinking of the right person? And then he came over to Cedar Point afterwards. Yeah,
he was at Geauga Lake, and then when Geauga Lake closed, that was a year after Geauga Lake closed, he had just yeah, best
gotcha.
sound industry.
I'm going to agree with that. Definitely is. Curtis, thanks so much for sharing. Let's keep it in the Cedar Fair family here and go over to Jess McAdam Sellers at Kings Island.
Thanks. It's funny, Curtis, hearing you talk a little bit about Bill Spain, because that is the source of my favorite memory from the attractions industry. When I was working at Geauga Lake, just to set the tone here for you a little bit, This was, almost 20 years ago now that Cedar Fair purchased the Six Flags Park, and I was part of that team there. And it was a pretty rocky transition. It was a lot of stress for the management team there, including the general manager, Bill Spain. And so it was during the preseason. I was assigned to work in ride operations at that time. And my task for the day was to clean out the log flume, which was not going to be a clean or pleasant job whatsoever. We were going to get dirty. So in my thought process in getting ready for work that day, I said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to wear this old Six Flags polo that I have on today. That'll be a perfect shirt to get dirty. So anyway, we go about our job. We get the log flume cleaned up, and lo and behold, my shirt is completely dirty. And as we're leaving the log flume, I run into Bill Spain. And for those of you who haven't met Bill Spain, he is a giant person. And I was only 18, right? So I'm just this little kid, basically, and this giant general manager, larger-than-life guy comes up to me, and he says, Jess, come here. And I go over there, and Bill grabs me by the shirt, and like Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt in the middle of a WWE ring, he rips my shirt completely down the middle, leaving me there with nothing. And he says, now you look like a real Six Flags employee. And so in the moment, I'm like dumbfounded, right? I'm the general manager literally ripped the shirt off of me here. And a little voice in the back of my head said, just roll with it. Just roll with it. And so I turned my hat around backwards. I let my belt loose a couple notches and let my pants sag down. And I said, now I think I really got it. And so I walked away there just looking completely disheveled. And Bill started laughing, and I knew I was in a good place. And of course, apologies to my friends and colleagues who do work at Six Flags. Again, it was a very different time, and I think nothing, I have the utmost respect for my friends who work for Six Flags. But, it was just an interesting, funny story that I still remember that is a reminder to me to just choose my attitude and choose my reactions, and crazy things will happen, and you just got to roll with the punches sometimes. And to this day, Bill and I are good friends, and I love chatting with him and seeing how he's doing.
Jess, I love that. And it kind of ties into what Curtis was saying too about, the moment, you could have, handled that a bunch of different ways. And Curtis, if you didn't walk along with Peggy and Bill, things might have been much different. So thank you both for sharing those. That's really awesome. Let's go across the pond to the first person who actually joined our call today. Kevin Williams, would you please share your favorite experience?
Oh, no, we have to keep it clean, don't we? So Kevin Williams here from KWP. And really, I started the consultancy back in 2004 when I came back to the UK. And I left the UK prior to that to work with Disney for 4 years. And I think for myself, it was recognition is going to be the big thing for me that still sticks with me. The understanding that I was joining a community, not just a large entertainment corporation, but also an industry that has been really good to me over the years. And my special memories are when we threw open the doors of Disney Quest, the facility that we were working on for all those years. And it was to be able to be involved in a project where so many people had worked so hard, much more than I had a cakewalk. I was lucky because I enjoy what I do, and so every day is a great day. But to have been involved in that project, and then to see the fundamental part that makes our industry, the guests coming across the threshold, their happiness, their enjoyment, their wonder, that's really when I saw that the industry I'm in is not just an employment, but it's a vocation. And that is what keeps me getting up in the morning and keeps me working even in these trying times. And guys, thank you for allowing us to express that to a wider audience.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's amazing. When you have the opportunity to open a new facility or even open a new attraction, all of the work and the energy and the dedication that goes to it, it's you can just sense it. So it's so palpable when it opens and it all comes to life and it all all kind of comes to fruition of just everything that everyone has worked on for so long. So thanks so much for sharing that. Ryan Bertram from Accesso, thanks so much for joining us. Let's pass it over to you.
So happy I could join in for your 150. So I had to think back to, the most special moment that I could think of. And I think I gave an example of 1989 at SeaWorld, going to the park with my grandfather, and then ultimately visiting that park with my son and my own family years later when he's not even here, and realizing that I could have that same connected experience, even though my grandfather is no longer here, by riding that same Sky Tower with my own son. And it was a really cool moment. And I realized that if you can't look back, you can always look forward. And to me, there's moments coming from the vendor space and not having worked, within the parks. I have a technology background. There's always those moments where you can get so sidelined and so buried in the project that you're like, why am I doing this? And you have to reach back into those moments. And it's that moment that I say, I'm doing this so I can create that. So at some point I can create that moment for somebody else and pass that on. So I'd say that was a driver, but really going back to probably the most important moment, I was working in a cube at a software sales job roughly 5 years ago, and just typing away. Am I going to hit my quarterly numbers? Am I going to do what I want to do? And I had this growing sense of, I want to be passionate about what I do. I don't just want to go quarter by quarter, number by number. We have these things in the technology industry called quarterly business reviews, or QBRs. And you do them, and it's a big dog and pony show, for lack of a better term. And then I get this call from, I got a note through LinkedIn where, I'm a big advocate for LinkedIn, and I got this note from a recruiter, and I generally don't, take many recruiter calls, but she seemed pretty interesting. And she said, there's this technology company in Lake Marion. We want to talk to you about a role there in client services. Would you consider leaving technology? And so we had a talk, and I was like, well, what does it pay? We got down to that. She's like, oh, this is what it's going to pay compared to where you are right now. And I was like, okay. And I took the leap anyways, because I wanted to be passionate about what I've done. Have I ever made that back? No. Am I ever going to be where I was financially? Am I 10 times happier? Yes. I wake up every day. Well, I'm 5 years into this now, and I wake up every day saying, when's this ride going to be over? When are we going to have to step off and move to something else? And it just never ends. And so it's such a great collective of people and individuals like yourself that have made it, check all the boxes, all the feels. And there's some things that money can't buy. This industry definitely covers those things, those intangibles that you can't. Plus, the first time I went to IAPA and I saw Ben Story's Union Jack jacket, I mean, where else can I get that? What other industry? So congrats on the 150, and I'm very excited for more of your future podcasts, and happy to be here with all of you. So I'm thankful to be in this industry and to be a part of all this.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you sharing that. And what a great testimony for somebody who didn't grow up in the industry, right? I mean, you had those experiences as a guest, but so many of the folks that are on the call and we've had on the podcast and things, and even Beth talked about it, how you kind of grow up in the industry, and then for this to touch you a little bit later on in life and you to kind of feel that roller coaster and be on that ride is such a great story. So thank you for sharing that, Ryan. I really do appreciate that. At this point, let's go to Tony Moore in Oklahoma at the Gathering Place.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, and congrats on your 150 podcast. I got two quick stories, and they speak about the competitive nature for industry. While we are competitive independently as parks, we're also just one industry. But when I was in the SeaWorld parks about 2001, we had a marketing initiative called Shamu Across America, where we had 30 cars, Volkswagen cars, painted like Shamu. And we thought it would be funny to take about 13 of them and just drive through all the competitive theme parks. And so we had a convoy, and as you can imagine, these cars spread out over a period of distance, covered quite a bit of geography. And so we had about 13 cars, and we went through Disney tolls, said we made the wrong turn. They had to send us another way to get out. And we went through MGM, all the Disney parks, and did the same for Universal. And it caused quite a bit of an uproar, so bad that Disney officially banned the Shamu cars from being on their property after that. But it just speaks of the fun industry that we had. And actually, it was a great part of guerrilla marketing back then. But in that line, my main story I want to tell about is, and Kevin, you may remember Mel Bobo that opened Disney Quest. Mel Bobo took the head of Bush Entertainment at the time before Cyril's prior owner, Anheuser-Busch. Bush Entertainment was a subsidiary. And there was a guy named John Roberts that was the park president. And Universal Studios had just opened in Orlando. And Cyril, being the animal park, needed to build a dog kennel, because our dog kennels at the time was really, really subpar for an animal park. So general manager named Bill Davis, I was a young supervisor, and Bill Davis asked me, he says, go out to all the parks, look at their dog kennels, take pictures, don't let them know what you're doing, then bring it all back to me. And so got it. So went out to Universal Studios with a guy from design and engineering, one of the design and engineering managers named Joaquin. And so you had an African-American guy, a Hispanic guy in a sports car, pulled up in a revenue area, a dog kennel area. Joaquin, the design and engineering, he went walking around the building, looking at thrust and building structure and roof lines. And me, the operator, I went inside the building to look at the operation. As you can see where this story is headed, it didn't take long before security saw us on the camera. And at the time, Universal was sponsored by Chrysler, and so they had all these Chrysler sedans when they first opened. And the next thing I knew, I was inside the dog kennel area. I looked through the glass, and I saw this Chrysler sedan pull up in a hurry. Guys got out. They took Joaquin, who was walking around the building, isolated him, asked him what he was doing. They took me on the inside to a different park, and both our stores were different. And about this time, someone was getting ready to call Orange County to take us away. But I knew a pal of mine who's still with Universal Park, Jeff Polk. And so I said, look, I know Jeff Polk, and he gave us permission to come out here and look. And needless to say, we couldn't identify that we were at Cyril Parks at the time. And so security isolated us. They told us we need to get proper permission. They sent us away. The irony of it is both Joaquin and I ended up working for Universal Studios a few years later, but it just speaks of the espionage that we do among parks and the competitive edge that we have, but more so the fun industry that we all work in.
Absolutely. And it ties in really nicely with what you said at the beginning of that is, while we're all competing independently, we're all in the industry, together as one. So thanks for sharing those stories. That was really entertaining. Let's go back across the pond to David Bromelo. Would love to hear your favorite industry memory. And we know you are full of them from the recent interview you gave us just a couple of weeks ago for the podcast. So curious to hear yours.
Well, hey guys. Well, first of all, congratulations on 150. It's a great achievement. I think I sent a note in about the Loch Ness Monster, but I'm going to go back a little further than that. But before I do that, I know you're not going to ask me about my first IAPA. It was a rather small, drunken, debauched affair back in 1983 in New Orleans, and I really can't remember much of it. But that was my first one. So, but good evening, everybody. 42 years in, I really do feel like the old geezer on the call tonight. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go back, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I'm going to go back 42 years when I started my career. My first year, my first day on the job, I was handed a toolbox by my father on a job site. And I got to build an Arrow steeplechase ride with my dad. And you know what? That's what got me started in the industry. I was 17 years old. I just started to study engineering, and I had the privilege of building this ride with my father. And after we finished that, we went on and we built another roller coaster, a launch loop from Arrow. And, you guys asked me to kick around some ideas and, from my career, which I've been very blessed. I've had many years in the industry, and I cannot find a more fonder moment than I had in that first year and a half, those first couple of years, being able to build 2 rides with my father. And then from there, going back to the statement I made to you guys about the Loch Ness Monster. It was about 9 years later, having built those rides with my dad, I get to sit on top of the tall loop of the Loch Ness Monster. And back then I used to enjoy a cigarette, and I sat down, had a smoke, and I thought, right, David, you've made it. Here we are in the industry, 9 years later, sitting on top of this ride at Busch Gardens, and absolutely, fantastic time. But again, it's been a privilege. And, I think it was Jess mentioned Jarger Lake. I just want to apologize to Jess. I was part of the crew that took down the Intamin drop tower from Rocky Point, Rhode Island, and sent it your way at Jarger Lake. I do apologize for that.
I
Thanks
think
for having me, guys. It's
Joe
great to hear all the great stories.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing those again, David. I've heard that one before about your dad and the toolbox and everything, but it touches me every time, just because I know how special it was to you. It really started your career in this industry, and I think we probably all, if we think back to our origin story, as we've talked a little bit about, what was it that got us started, and what a great way to kind of celebrate the industry by just thinking about how we got started. So thank you again for that, David, and for joining us here today. So I think we've got everybody on the call except Josh. We haven't heard from you.
That's right. We haven't heard from you either. Who should go first, me or you?
Let's see. You're younger, so you go first.
You know what? I also want to go first anyway, because I know that yours is going to be so much better than mine. So I'd rather open for you for this. So with that, my favorite industry memory, and someone else said that this wasn't a very easy exercise to do, right? Because there are so many, and I was even this morning I woke up and I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about on the podcast today, because I could pick from this over here, and I think what I'm going to talk about as really what was my most memorable moment in the industry was about 10 years ago, and it had to do with the opening of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter the first time. So the Diagon Alley side, the Hogsmeade side, wow, at Islands of Adventure. So it was middle of June 2010, and particularly the red carpet event that happened 2 nights before. So at the time, I was in guest services. I was in guest communications at Universal. Had also been in VIP tours, as Ben mentioned earlier. I started out actually doing RIP tours for Halloween Horror Nights. But I was a tour guide / guest services senior coordinator, and we were just fielding a lot of communication from guests and getting a lot of concerns in regards to their visit and the grand opening. The calendar kept on having to shuffle a little bit, and media now needed to be slotted in during this time, so it had to be closed to the general public during this time, and it became something that was, it was kind of difficult to stay on top of, right? We're trying to find out when our guests actually going to be able to come in. And there was one guest who was particularly frustrated with it, and used the phrase, you have ruined my vacation, which I'm sure everyone on this call and probably everyone listening to this podcast had heard before. But I guess she made a compelling enough argument to my boss, who I remember she was on the phone with the guest, and I walked by my boss's office and we make brief eye contact, and immediately she goes back to the call and she says, "Oh, and Josh is going to take amazing care of you. Don't worry whatsoever." And I thought, why did I just walk by at this time? What just happened? What am I being signed up for? And it turned out to be really a service recovery for a guest that was really bigger than anything that I'd ever done before and anything I'd ever done since then. This was so much more than just, refund your money or give you tickets to come back or whatever it was. They were staying at the Portofino Bay, the hotel on property. And I went and I met this woman and her family. She had her son and her daughter with them. and I gave them basically a personal, VIP. Essentially, I escorted them from their hotel into the park behind the scenes. This was while everything was really ramping up for the grand opening event for the Wizarding World. And the red carpet event was happening this night. So this was something that, you can't just pull out of a drawer and give to a guest, right? It was the type of service recovery that was a really unique way of turning a situation around. And so I was able to get them right in the front on the red carpet, and I stayed with them as their guide, concierge, bottled water getter, whatever they needed during that time, and being able to see the looks on their faces as just all of these celebrities were walking down, the stars from the movies, Orlando politicians were coming down, Mayor Buddy Dyer, like the entire Orlando Magic was there. John Williams, came down, anyone that was involved with the movie, the cast, the crew, anything from that standpoint. And being able to see the looks on their faces and how happy they were, which was so much bigger than how upset they were before any of this happened. While they were still in the "you ruined my vacation" mentality. And that was something that was just a special moment for me to be able to see, and also really to be a part of, and actually kind of get to experience that red carpet grand opening as well. And that's something that really has stuck out to me as something that was a very special moment for me in the industry.
So Josh, would you say that that's where you get your idea of exceeding expectations when it comes to guest recovery?
It definitely does. I would say, that moment, I would say, is the highlight of it, but everything of just being in that environment during that time frame, and also, studying it too. I was in graduate school at UCF at that time, and taking, guest services classes and looking at these research studies done on service recovery, and being able to implement it in the workplace right then and there, and really being able to actually kind of like pick apart, all right, why does this work? That is where that passion for complaint resolution and service recovery came from.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, that was an awesome experience, and mine might not top that.
I don't know. It might, but hopefully I didn't set the bar too high, but let's pass it over to you to cap this off.
That's really cool. So my favorite memory in the attractions industry is actually when I got married at Islands of Adventure back in 2005. My wife and I, at the time she was my fiance, we decided that we didn't necessarily want a church wedding. We had met through people from Universal, and we'd been to the parks many times together. And so we said, what would happen if we got married at Universal? And so, along through the planning process and everything, we ended up getting married in front of the Mystic Fountain. The Mystic Fountain at Islands of Adventure actually married us. So we have a Justice of the Peace who was inside the control booth for the Mystic Fountain, and this is someone his name is Bryce Ward, and he was the caretaker at Halloween Horror Nights, and he would actually marry people at Halloween Horror Nights. So he had been ordained or certified as a Justice of the Peace prior to that. And so he was working in entertainment at Universal, and I had some friends in entertainment, and they said, well, we'll just get Bryce to be in the control booth, and he'll marry you. So my wife and I stood in front of the Mystic Fountain there, and we had about 80 people that had shown up for the wedding. What I didn't know is that my parents had created T-shirts for everybody for the occasion, because of course it's Florida, it's a theme park. You're not going to dress up like you normally would for a wedding. So our invitation had said, come in your best tourist formal wear. So on the white T-shirt had a little bow tie in the front, and it said tourist formal wear, and then on the back it had Shrek and Fiona in their onion carriage, and Shrek was supposed to look like me, and Fiona was supposed to look like my wife Linda, and everybody in the audience, I guess you'd call it, had those T-shirts on. So as we walked out from back behind the area that right there by the Sinbad show, we saw all these people in these white T-shirts, and it was just an amazing experience to have one of the most memorable experiences you're going to have as an adult happen at a theme park, which I had dedicated my life to, and my wife actually agreed to do it. So that was a big plus right there. So in the years after that, we would go back to Islands of Adventure. We'd go by the Mystic Fountain and say, hey, this is where it happened. So that was always a lot of fun. And of course, the ceremony happened while the park was open. So we've got people, as we took pictures and everything, we've got people that are kind of looking around, like asking, is this a show? Is this real? What, they didn't really know what was going on. So that was a lot of fun too. We had our reception at the little landing right down by Mythos, and my good friend Bob, he did a toast for us with a SpongeBob SquarePants sippy cup. And then all of our friends got to spend the day in the park. The best part, honestly, about that day was, the best part was getting married. I have to say that. The second best part was that we had a lot of people come in from out of town. And we were kind of wondering, like, how are we going to get everybody in and that kind of thing. And we had reached out to, I had, because I worked there, I reached out to people that we were inviting to the ceremony. And I said, in lieu of any kind of gift, if you've got a spare, comp ticket laying around, if you can sign some people in, that would be wonderful. And for all the people that showed up from out of town, our relatives, our friends, and that kind of thing, nobody had to pay to get into the park. And this is, this was not a big event that places do. Like, I know Disney does a lot of, big time weddings, and Universal at the time wasn't really doing anything, and I'm not really sure what they're doing now, but it wasn't a planned event. It was just kind of everybody showing up. So that was really wonderful to feel that generosity and to be able to have that experience at a place where I had dedicated, a big part of my life, not only in the industry, but also that park, to have that very special memory. So that's my favorite memory of being in the theme park industry.
That's why I went first. I told you that was going to be better.
You also get wife points for that one.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that you shared that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, but you answered it, if guests walked by and thought it was just a regular show happening in the park. But the second question I have is, did you get splashed with water?
We did. Absolutely. Yes. At the end of the ceremony, after we said, I do, so we got splashed with water, and it was great fun. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, this has been, like we said at the beginning, this was an incredible celebration of the industry. And I know I'm very thankful for everyone who was on the call today to be able to share their favorite industry moments. It was really exciting to hear the amount of variety that everyone had. And, there's so many amazing things really to celebrate within this industry. And, we're at a time where the industry is struggling a little bit, where it's, 2020 is going to be a tough year. We're on the road back up, hopefully. And, but even during these times, we have all of these reminders for why we are in this business and why we do what we do.
And I think what I am taking away too is that, as much as we've said this before this call, we said we're all in this together, and there's so many stories that we hear about. It's not just about us doing something, right? It's about how we're affecting other people. It's about how other people are affecting us, and really being able to tap into the community that we have in this industry, not just at our specific park or our specific company, but really as an industry as a whole. And that's been wonderful to hear all these great stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone so much for joining us on the call today and for sharing your favorite industry memory. It was really exciting, like I said, to hear all this. And for everyone out there listening, we are all Attractions Pros.
That's terrible. We should try again.
Take two.
We can leave it in as is, too.
I would drop it just like that. Just like that. With Beth's comment.
Drop the mic.
Love it.
Thanks for joining us for another great episode of the Attraction Pros podcast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to drop us a line on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and make sure to follow us on all the social channels.
And make sure you've subscribed to the show so you can get the latest episodes every single week. Also, if you're new to the show, be sure to check out all the great episodes and guests we've featured in the past.
And if you want to learn more about Matt and Josh and check out the best articles for you to operate your attraction most successfully, be sure to visit us at AttractionPros.com.